Are you interested in riding one of the ACT tracks? Well, here are some useful tips for you. What's up, my biker friends, and welcome back to another video. As I'm cruising around in Sardinia, it's only been a few days that I've finished my first ACT track. It was the ACT Italy track, and it's supposed to be one of the easier ones, but with the amount of rain that we had, some of the stuff was actually quite difficult. Here are a few tips if you want to ride one of the ACT tracks. Let's start with the most obvious one. Don't do this by yourself, especially if you're on a heavy adventure bike like this, the 1290 Super Adventure S, but even if it's a medium-sized T700, go with friends, have at least one other person with you. It's better to have 2 or 3 other guys with you, because you never know, even in the seemingly simplest section, the bike can slip on the way from you, and there are some really remote parts of the, especially the ACT Italy track, but I'm sure some of the other ones too. Anytime you go on an off-road track, if you're really out there remotely and you're by yourself and you hurt yourself, and then you have to get out that situation by yourself, that can be quite difficult. Simple stuff that can happen: the bike falls onto you and you have a hard time freeing yourself from under the bike. Just the fact that you need to lift up your bike, or of course if you crash the bike. We had the unfortunate incident that one of our team members crashed on the first day towards the end of day number 1, and that was in the middle of the boonies, in the middle of a section. We were far away from any town, and he took a right turn, misjudged the speed, and basically his bike slid away from under him, and he landed on the sand so badly that he broke his hands. Jochen and I were riding in the front. We had to turn around to see what was going on, and luckily Thomas was able to still ride his bike despite a broken hand. He managed to, trooper through the whole thing and get the bike down the hill. But some of the sections after he broke his hands were quite challenging. I found them quite challenging, and I didn't have a broken hand to go down. And then of course, to add insult to injury, he's trying to go down the hill and he was having a hard time holding onto his handlebars, so he crashed a second time, injuring his foot. So this kind of stuff, if you want to do this by yourself, that's not such a good idea. It was still a tough one, Thomas, to ride out of it, even with the help that he had, but at least there's other guys there that can help you with stuff, where you can get help if you can't do it yourself. So don't ride this by yourself. The next thing would be skill or training level. Now, the ACT track, if you watch the original Tour Tech videos, some of the stuff is relatively easy, but I wouldn't recommend that to any beginners. You should at least do 1 or 2 off-road trainings and have some experience before you ride these tracks. Most of the tracks are actually fine. The majority of the tracks itself are fine, but that's not the problem. But it's those sort of small, difficult sections that appear out of nowhere, where you need to have your skills ready to go. If it's a steep incline after a corner, if it's muddy or rainy conditions, if it's tight hairpin turns, stuff like that, it's really good if you have done that before in the training and you're comfortable on the bike. Otherwise, this may be a very unpleasant experience for you. So I wouldn't recommend to do this with no off-road experience at all, especially on a heavy motorcycle. Now, that's different if you have a lighter bike. Still wouldn't recommend doing it without any kind of prior training. Let's talk about tire choices. Now, tire choices, this is definitely not something you should do on road tires. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but we had a guy in the group, he was going to go with a 90-10 tire, 90% on-road, 10% off-road, and there were sections in there where he would have had a really hard time, if he even had a chance at all, to get out of some of the stuff. We had muddy conditions where it was tough enough with the 50-50 tires that we had mounted, but if you have a road tire in those conditions, you're completely lost. And if you get stuck in the middle of the wilderness and you can't get your bike out, or you have to get your buddies to help you push the bike out in these impossible situations, then that's not a cool thing to do. So my recommendation would be go with something at least a 60-40 tire, 60 on-road, 40 off-road, or more aggressive than that. The three tire choices that we had on the tour was my Midas EO7 Plus Dakar tire. They were brand new. We had a couple of guys that had a Karoo 3 tire, also those are brand new tires. And we had Jochen with the brand new Anarchy Wild. So those are the right tires to use. They still have good on-road performance for the long on-road sections that you're going to do on an ACT track, but they will get you out of some of the difficult situations, especially if the weather conditions are not favorable. You know, you can't count on sunny and dry weather conditions. It can rain, and if it rains, it gets muddy. Some of the seemingly easy parts get really, really difficult. The next thing is accommodation. I would recommend booking them ahead of time. It probably depends on the kind of season you go. If you go in high season, you may not actually find something, or if you, what we did, go really early in the season, some of the stuff isn't even open yet. So especially if you're traveling in a larger group and you want to make sure that you get to stay in a hotel together, you already know the track you're going to go. If you follow the ACT 5-day tracks, you already know where you're going to end up, and you can look for a place somewhere close to where you end up with the track. We only went with the single recommendation that the ACT makers had on their website, and that was the Hotel Lido, which was fine on the lake. Most of the other recommendations aren't even that great, so I would recommend looking for places that are close by and pick something that suits your budget or suits your comfort level. There are definitely better options out there than the ones that are recommended by the team. The next tips would be start your day early for several reasons. First, you don't know what's going to happen on the track, and you want a little bit of time towards the back end. If someone crashes, something goes wrong, you need to repair something on the track. If you want to finish the track, then start early. There's always the option of going off the track and going on paved roads and just go straight to your hotel. So you can shortcut some of the tracks. They just kind of snake and meander through the mountains. So that's always an option, but if you intend to ride the whole thing, it makes sense to start early. So we try to meet for breakfast between 7:30 and 8 and get going by 9 o'clock the latest. The next tip would be bring tools, the basic stuff that you need to fix your bike. Bring a tire puncture kit, bring something like JB Weld, liquid metal, something to fix the bike on the go. Some tape, some zip ties, things like that can go a long way. Something on the bike brakes. There's certain things you can't fix on the trail depending on your skill level, but it's good to have something there. So, for example, we had a tire puncture on the very last day. The Anarchy Wild tire, Jochen's Anarchy Wild tire, got punctured by a rock, and that rock looked like a sort of an ancient shark tooth. And that rock, it wasn't even a puncture, it was actually a tear of the tire. And luckily we had enough tire puncture kits, because it wasn't just one of those rubber plugs. We had to use all three of them, and we were able to fix the tire good enough that we can pump up the tire. We had an air pump with us and some CO2 cartridges, so we were able to fill up the tire with air. So bring some of the basic stuff with you. You never know if you're going to need it or not, and some of the basic stuff you can do yourself, and at least you can then go down the mountain and have the bike repaired. In our case, we had the tire fixed, and we were able to go after that. Now a word on luggage and how much stuff to bring. Less is more, guys. Less is more, because every kilogram of weight on the track, depending on what kind of bike you have, but even if it's a T700, if you're riding on a 1250 GS or a 1290 Super Adventure on these heavier bikes, I've got about 30 something kilograms on my bike, and it really made a difference. It showed. And this is with soft luggage. And if you have panniers and hard luggage, you easily be adding 40-50 kilo with the payload that I have. So if you can reduce it to a minimum, that will certainly help you maneuver the bike, but also when the bike tips over, it's a lot easier to pick it up. I was surprised on how heavy my bike is when it's fully loaded, and I was really happy to have others to help me pick the bike up. It's possible to do it yourself, but it's really hard. You're not going to do that many times in a row, or you just have to take all your luggage down, pick up the bike, and then put the luggage back on. So don't bring as much, bring as little as you possibly can. It's going to make that sort of journey that much more enjoyable. The next tip that I would have for you is bring a picnic. Bring some food, bring something to drink, definitely bring something to drink. But some of the places are pretty remote and there isn't really always a place to have lunch or have something to eat. Also, it's kind of nice to have a picnic. We went to different grocery stores and just got some bread and some salami and cheese. And then we bought this portable coffee maker, this Italian coffee maker. And then Jochen got these small espresso cups, and so we could have a little coffee break on the go. It's really cool to do that on the go, and it just kind of keeps you independent of some of the food supplies that you have on the track. And there are some parts, I think it was day number 3 or 4, I think it was number 4, where there wasn't really anything for a long stretch. So it's good to bring your own stuff, and it's a lot more fun to do a picnic for lunch. Another tip that I would have for you, bring enough to drink. Make sure you have enough water for the entire day. A hydration pack like this makes a lot of sense. If you don't have one, bring plenty of bottles of water. Depending on how warm it is, you will need a lot to drink. Some of the stuff is quite tough and you'll be happy to have something to drink. So bring enough for the entire trip. Don't count on the fact that you can pick some water up on the go. You can in most cases, but it's good to have it with you. So just in case you don't want to start looking for water, you want to have it with you. Bring all the water you need for a single day. Okay guys, this is my off-the-cuff tips if you want to attempt an ACT. This was of course just based on the ACT Italy, which was a lot of fun. And this is my second largest off-road trip, I have to say. And I did the West Alps, there's a video on that here too. And the West Alps are challenging to some degree, but because of the bad weather that we had for the ACT Italy, some of the sections were a lot worse than what we had with the West Alps trip. So it's good to be prepared. If you have a feeling that you may not get challenged enough, just pick the proper ACT weather and take a rainy day and it'll be challenging enough, I promise. Anyway guys, if you have additional tips, leave them in the comment section, because there may be good tips there for me as well, because this won't be the last ACT I'll be riding. Guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, and as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, ride safe and stay awesome.
Take me back, 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 back.